Migrating to Australia, the podcast, that sometimes we have to do do-overs, don't we, David? Sometimes
we do.
sometimes we didn't do anything wrong, but we have to do something again. And today we're speaking with somebody who's appearing on the podcast for the second time, but for various, shall we say, extra care that was being paid to Grace's case, because Grace was applying for a new visa, and when we were ready to run the last time with Grace, and because David looks after everyone with extra special kid gloves, we just decided that perhaps when someone is deciding on making an adjudication, that being in the public spotlight, as you say, is probably not the best thing to do. So, David Bongiorno, the migration titan, Australia's foremost migration lawyer, you get the pleasure of reintroducing Grace to the second time for me, but for the first time for our audience.
It's wonderful for you, Grant, and wonderful for the listeners. We've got a force of energy with us today. We've got a French lawyer, a creative entrepreneur, an MBA student, and the most amazing dancer. Grace, welcome back.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
One of the things that we couldn't run the last episode, and that's fine. But this one, I want to ask, you're a multitasker. We have very busy lives, but you have a super busy life. You were telling us before we started the podcast, you start your day at 5 a.m.
Yes, I do. I basically do that because I want to be able to do everything I need to do in my day. And so I allocate tasks according to times and according to days, so I could be able to do the various activities I have.
And you've got a lot of activities. You're doing an MBA now.
Yes.
And you're a French lawyer with multiple years of experience. What made you do an MBA?
Basically, I just started my social enterprise 1.5 years ago. And I always wanted to study MBA or to do a business course because it would help me to be a better businesswoman. And so when the opportunity arose, I just took it.
Now, David, let's go right back to the start. I think we need to do that, because when we sort of left off on the episode that we didn't run, we were in this frustrating position that it didn't look like Grace was going to be able to stay and continue to contribute to the community here in Melbourne, which she's been so much a part of. So how about we go right back to when Grace first arrived?
You arrived on a Master of Creative Industries. Now, what prompted you to do that?
So that's actually not the first thing I did when I came to Australia. So when I came to Australia, I have found a position as event manager in a non-for-profit to organize cultural workshop in schools. So I did that for a couple of months, I think 6 or 7 months. And then because I fell in love with Melbourne, I wanted to stay, so I stayed. And my two main purposes when I came to Australia was to find an idea to gather both my legal and event management background to build a business. And my second purpose was to improve my English, especially my speaking. So I then find the course, the Master of Creative Industries at Melbourne Polytechnic. And so this master is really entrepreneurial orientated. And so that's why I did the master. So it's basically a master for any creative. You could be dancer, painter, visual artist. It really applies to everyone. And the master will teach you how to be a successful business person and how to take care of your day-to-day businesses and activities.
You've come from one of the most beautiful countries on earth, France. Everybody, we all dream of France, of baguette, red wine, fashion. And you've fallen in love with Melbourne. What made you fall in love with Melbourne when you've come from Paris?
That's so Australian to say that. That's so funny. I guess I love France. I do. but I really love the lifestyle in Melbourne, and it's really cultural. When I say cultural, I mean there are a lot of festival, a lot of activities you can do, and especially street activities. So going in a pub, having live music, and a lot of events just for free, organized by the city or communities. So that's the part I really loved, and I thought as well, because of the underrepresentation of African activities and African dance activities, I thought it would be a good opportunity for me to bring my, a little bit of my expertise and experience in Melbourne and in Victoria.
Grace, can you
Yes.
give us a bit of an overview of what the African community in Melbourne is?
It's really different as opposed to France. So in Australia and in Melbourne, you have mostly immigration from South Africa and East Africa, with a lot of Sudanese, South African, Zimbabwean, and really few. When I say really few, is I don't even know the percentage, but really few immigration from West Africa. When in France is the opposite. You have more immigration from West Africa and less from South Africa, which is normal in a way because it's French all colonies go to France and English all colonies go to Australia or to England.
David.
You know what we're doing, Grace? We had a guy called Benny or whatever his name was come in and say we cut each other off. So Grant and I are trying not to cut each other off. You go, Grant. Was it Benny?
Who has the go now?
Grace, I just want everyone, because we didn't run the first episode, and it was a really interesting situation of the amount of effort that you had put into developing programs for the community that were helping build bonds between the African migrant and the shall we say the old Australian community. And I don't only mean the Anglo-Saxon. There's also all those non-English speaking backgrounds that have integrated into Australian life. You were built, African migration into Melbourne is really sort of the fourth wave, or even the fifth wave of migration that we've had here. And it's really hard to break into all those already cultural established bonds from the earlier migrants. So, but what you were doing, I'd like you to explain that you were doing programs that were actually bringing the sort of the currently marginalised migrant group, which is the African group in Melbourne, into the broader cultural activities that were going on. So can you explain what you were doing, and then we'll maybe talk about your academic progression a bit more?
Okay. So the first time when we did the interview, I just finished the flash mob. So I just finished my festival at the Queen Victor Market as part of the Fringe Festival. And basically the festival was about bringing different individuals from different culture and from different communities together, and using African dance to do that, because African dances, they are really an expression of your daily events and daily life. So everyone could relate with those dances. And that's why I specialize in those dances. And so I ran the festival doing workshop at the Queen Victor Market, and everyone was invited. And mainly, I would say migrants, because in Australia, migration hasn't been for so long, especially African immigration, when in France, the makeup of the population is really big. And African immigration started in France in 1945, when in Australia, it just started in the 80s. So that changed the culture, that changed the relationship with African culture and the understanding with African culture. And I thought by doing that, by using African dances, I will provide an experience for people and individuals to understand the culture by living the culture and by experiencing the culture with different people.
With regards to
Sorry,
those
David, I just want to talk about African migration just for a minute, because it just popped into my head. Grace, African forced emigration has developed British colonies in the Caribbean. America was slavery. Belgium with basically stripping parts of the Congo. Yeah. How was the French colonisation in terms of the treatment of Africans? Was there forced dislocation? Was there slavery?
No, so it was different.
Because France originally colonised Haiti, didn't it?
Yes. It was different because
I think there was slavery, but I think there was French slaves in Haiti, wasn't there? But not.
Yes.
So why?
The reasons are really different. So in France,
why don't we have that sort of view of French as a slaving nation, the same way that Britain and the US have been viewed?
Okay, I wasn't going to answer like that.
I'm just wondering, did the French get off lucky because most of the exploitation the French did remained on African soil, so that the world didn't see it?
Probably yes. I would say yes. I would say that's it.
I know I'm hard.
Questions without notice, mate. What are you doing?
It's okay. I would say yes. It brings a question about being aware of the African slavery and African immigration. It brings this question. You have to be aware of that. If you're not living in Africa, if you don't have friends from Africa, and if you don't know of French African colonies, you wouldn't know the real impact of colonization and slavery in French colonies. When with English slavery and English immigration, as you said, they deported the population, and they deported the population to go in their countries. Therefore, when you have someone who is a slave and someone who will have ancestors that are slaves in the States or in England, obviously you will understand that they were here because of slavery. So you understand because you live the impact, you live with them. When in France, we didn't have that. The African immigration is on a voluntary basis. And also, well, yes and no. So after the Second War, France was asking from international to come from everywhere. So from the States, from England, from Africa, from Asia, from everywhere, because they needed to have more labor work employees. So at that time, it was kind of open. And because some countries wanted to be and to have their independence, they came to France. So I would say it was a strategic immigration, but they didn't have the pressure as well. When you're deported because you're a slave, you just don't have the choice. If you want to come to France because you think you will have a better life and you want to seize this opportunity, well, you were able to do it. So it's kind of a different strategy and different mindsets, I would say.
Was there a different? Was there a significant African-born population in France after the First World War?
Not really. Not really. So the bigger wave started with this after the Second World War.
So it's a result of the decolonization, which basically all occurred as part of the various treaties that ended and settled the Second World War. Yes. and all the reparations that went with it. Okay, that's really interesting. It's far more complicated than the history of forced migration into the Caribbean and the Americas.
Mhm.
Let's return to lighter themes. Grace, you're talking about you bring joy to Melbourne, to its city and suburbs with dance. We talk about African dance, but obviously there's Benin dance, Togo dance,
Yes.
Nigerian dance. What are the various, so people listening can Google and learn more? What are some of the dancing styles from which countries? What types of dance styles are you bringing to your sessions, to your classes? What types of dance styles?
So they are more from West Africa, so from Congo, West and Central Africa. So with the Congo Dombolo, the name of the dance is Dombolo, and Congo the country. Then from West Africa, you have, which is from Togo, you have Coupe de Calais, which is from Ivory Coast, you have Maliwa, which is from Cameroon. Yeah, I try to stay in the West African countries and Dombolo, because Dombolo is kind of the dance that is the root of all dances. If you know how to dance Dombolo, you will be able to dance other African dances, well, at least West African dances, because it's really grounded, using a lot your hips and your waistline. So, yeah.
Dombolo. Can you tell us what that actual style is? I love the word. Is it Dombolo? Dombolo?
Yes.
Tell us the style. What is it about?
So Dombolo is mainly a dance that you dance with your hips, but it could be a dance that you will dance with your shoulders as well. It's a dance that mainly was inspired by by Congolese traditional dances, and then it came to life in the 80s. So it's inspired by, you have the rumba, you have the
Samba?
Not samba.
Because there's crossover with Brazil and Africa as well in dance style, yeah?
So it's because of immigration, because most African immigration, and most people who were deported from Africa were from Congo and from West Africa, but mainly from Congo. So that's why, for instance, in Colombia, they have a dance called champeta, which is really inspired by Dombolo and by Congolese dances.
And while I'm blaming European countries for the ills of the world, let's not forget that it was the Spanish messing up most of South America, but we're not going to let the Portuguese off.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Because the Portuguese were the basic
first ones,
colonial powers in Brazil. Although Brazil's really complicated because it was so big, and the Brits were getting in on the north, and the Spanish were coming in on the west side. So
you've talked about French-speaking West Africa. Is there a dance tradition in English-speaking West Africa, like Nigeria? Is there?
Yes. So Nigeria and Ghana, most English-speaking countries. I do teach some of them, but I would say I like to be different. And because those dances are really a buzz, but Africa is really big. And I think we are lacking of representing all the countries. So that's why I tend to represent the countries I know, including Ghana and Nigeria, because I'm from Benin and Togo, and Benin and Togo were part of Ghana. So we have similar dances, and even my cultural heritage is from Ghana. So I love those dances, and I know those dances is just, they're booming today. Everyone knows about Ghanaian and Nigerian dances, but Africa is a continent with a lot of different countries, and we need to represent those countries more. So that's what I try to do.
And I've looked at your Insta feed, and you've got short, fat, tiny, large, all different body types, loving it and it's wonderful, because I'm conscious of my body, and I'm tempted to dance. I haven't danced since 1980.
It's okay. There is not a specific body type to dance. There is not a specific age you should be dancing. Dance is for everyone. And the way I construct my classes and the way I see dance is an expression. So if you're able to express yourself, just do it.
Is it the glue that brings people together from all diverse backgrounds?
The fact that you can express yourself? Yes. The freedom of being able to express yourself, the fact that most of those dances, they represent events that you can relate with and you understand. Therefore, you can embody the movement and the dances, and you can reproduce them because they will speak to everyone.
Does dance free your soul? I mean, being a lawyer can be soul destroying. It can be very monotonous. Was dance your respite when you were working as a lawyer in France?
Dance has been my relief for everything. It's not only to help me being healthy and sane when I was working as a lawyer, but for everything. When I was sad, when I was happy, when anything happened, I would be dancing. It doesn't matter if I'm in the street, if I'm in a cafe, I would just be dancing. If the music is good, you will see me dancing.
David, the world thanks you for not dancing since 1980.
Do you know what? But Grant, if you look at Grace's Insta page, I'm dancing on the inside. I'm seriously tempted to break out, and you'd be tempted to break out as well. The energy. Every post oozes positivity and enjoyment and energy. And you said you dance when you're sad. How is it different? How does sadness express itself in dance?
I would say African dance are really spiritual. So it gives you the freedom to be happy or sad. But I would say if I'm sad, I will play a different type of music. Actually, no, it's not true. I could play either upbeat music and really engaging music because I want to release, I want to jump, I want to, to be energetic in my dancing. But I could also play really smooth and calm music, which would be more like a spiritual communication with myself.
Are we a little bit stiff? You're very fluid and you move. Are we as Australians stiff and self-conscious or?
Self-conscious, that's definitely sure. But I would say most Westernized countries think like that because it's not ingrained in the society to move your hips or to move your pelvis it's not the way you will dance. When in Africa, we just don't think about it. You have so many parts in your body and you will activate all the parts of your body because you're dancing, you're expressing yourself with all the fibers of your human being.
Can I put a loosely formed theory to you both?
Go for it.
Well, many cultures, dance actually informs the culture. It passes on. It passes on unique messages. It reinforces teaching, or it is actually the deliverer of stories.
Exactly.
We don't have that in Western culture. I was, while you were talking before, I was just trying to think of any dance that I ever learned in school, as a kid or later, of a dance that is anything but a recreational and a demonstration of form. I can't think of any dance that we have in Western, in my Western experience, that tells a story. People will say ballet, but ballet reinforces a story that already exists. So, I mean, David, can you think of any dance?
That's a great question. I can't think of any Western
story on its own in Western culture.
No. And also,
I would say yes and no, because most dances in the Western world have been inspired by African dances. So I would say in the evolution of the inspiration and the expression of those dances, maybe they cut off this part, but I would say a lot of dancers actually connect with this part.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that dancers in the West aren't expressive.
No, but
what I'm saying is that they are not unique deliverers of a story, and they're not, and that's why they're not so deeply rooted in culture. And that, I think, and here's the essence of my theory, which is why in the West we are more self-conscious about dancing, because it's not an essential part of
the culture and of the
culture.
building of the
It's
society.
like if dance disappeared tomorrow from Western culture, there would be a lot of stuff that people didn't do, but we wouldn't lose something essential to the ongoing existence of the culture. That's kind of what I'm saying. Because the stories are out of books. The stories, it's the same way most of our stories are written rather than oral. We don't have a oral storytelling tradition, even though it probably started that way. But I think that's
I
why
understand what you mean.
I think that's why we're all dorky dancers, because it's not something
are. We don't have rhythm or timing.
But it's not something that, well, look at it in an Australian context.
I do.
You put Aboriginal kids, 3, 4, 5 years old, together in a group with 100 of them, and they'll dance because they know the stories.
It's beautiful.
They actually know what they're doing. We get out there and say,
we don't.
I don't know what I'm doing.
And there's a lot of fear too, Grace, because what happens when we're in third form or year 9, year 10 is a lot of our schools have dance classes with our sister schools, and we have to go to those dance classes, and we have to go as 15, 16-year-old boys and say, oh, hello, Grace, can you dance with me, please? And then you can say yes or no, and we have sweaty hands, and we're scared and shy. So it's not a natural. Grant's right. It's forced on us. And we don't.
Like, we're all going to learn the pride of Erin.
That's it.
Something that people who wore buckled shoes and wigs on their head in the 1700s did, and we go, oh, when they were slaving, that's how relevant it is to our life today. And I was just thinking, David, we probably need to really boil it down to being the Anglo-Saxon, the tradition, because although, again, I was trying to think of Europe, I still don't think that there's European folk dances that are demonstrating a story that didn't exist beforehand, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
okay. In that sense, yes. Okay.
Yeah. So, we've got ballets, Peter and the Wolf, Beauty and the Beast, musicals, Swan Lake and all that. Those stories all existed.
Do you find the kids, and maybe not like Grant and I, and that the young Australian kids of various backgrounds you teach are not as self-conscious and more adept and willing to learn and embrace dance for what it is?
It depends of the age.
Really? What are the differences? Tell us about the differences.
I would say before 8, if they haven't done any kind of cultural dance before, they will be more willing and not self-conscious, and they will actually kind of know their bodies and don't be afraid to move some parts of their bodies. When after 8, 9 years old, they are more stiff. If they haven't experienced cultural dances, any kind of cultural dances, they will be more stiff, definitely.
Can they be worked on? Grant and I can't be saved, we're too old. Can the younger kids be saved?
Of course, yes. Anyone can be. To be honest, anyone can dance. It's just a matter of practicing and commitment. But anyone can be able to dance. And also a matter of cultural understanding, because the more you understand the culture, the more you understand what you do. And therefore, it's all going to make sense.
Who inspired you? Obviously, family inspired you, but was there a particular dancer or somebody from Benin or somebody from France who you wanted to be like? Was there a dance hero or heroine?
No, I wouldn't say no. I didn't have a dance era. I was dancing because that was my way of expressing myself and the way of speaking and a way to be happy. I was dancing all the time. My mom used to tell me that I used to move so much in a womb that she thought that I would just be like, she's going to be a dancer. This kid is going to be a dancer.
That's fantastic.
She's right. And I was dancing everywhere. Even when I was a baby, I was reacting to music. But it's also because my father was a pianist, and my mom she loves dancing. So yes, it helps.
You go, right?
Grace, I know David sent you some questions. I'm going to completely ignore them. All right.
Questions without notice. Sorry, Grace, I tried.
I've got two questions for you that I've been wanting to ask since we started chatting, and I can't actually remember what you told us in the first episode. So the first question is, have you been back to Benin, Togo in recent years? And part of that question, if so, what's it like? If not, do you want to go there? And then the other question is, how does being a practitioner and an instructor of dance make you a better lawyer?
That's a great question. It's sent last one. I love that.
Okay. So first question, the last time I went to Benin and Togo was in 2016. So I would definitely love to go. And it was actually my plan before COVID happened. But anyway, so it will happen in the next years.
To extend that out, so because most of the people who are listening probably won't even know that Benin and Togo, two of the 54 current countries on the African continent.
He was Googling that. He was Googling the number.
Because we are really smart on the map.
Because I thought it was a few more, actually, but it's 2020, there's 54. What are Benin and Togo like? Like, are they big cities? Are they modern cities? Are the cities run down? Do they have
modern cities?
Do they have suburbs in the way that we would understand them in the Australian and the American context, or do the cities lead to a very rural setting? Like, do you see what I'm saying? Like how different is it if you're driving around? If you spend a week driving around, what would be really different in the eyes of a Westerner if they landed in Togo?
I would say they are in the middle. So Togo is more developed in terms of roads. You wouldn't think it's really rural when you are in the city, but then obviously when you go in the suburb, it's more rural. When in Benin, the roads are not as great, but in Togo the roads are pretty good. In Benin, the roads still need some work. But then the cultural and I would say the landscape, what you see, it's different. It's not the same construct you have in Australia. It's definitely not. It's not the same.
Politically, the Benin and Togo are probably two of the most stable countries in that part of the world, aren't they?
Yes.
That's a good thing. But what I suppose one of the questions that really, I mean, I have an Italian background. What did Mum and Dad say when you left the law and came to Australia? Was that I mean, you haven't come from a family of lawyers, so obviously they were very proud of you practicing law in France, working as a lawyer, a great effort. Were they supportive, or were they wanting you to maybe come to Australia and become an Australian lawyer, or what did Mum and Dad say?
So two things. First thing is the way I was brought up. They always taught me that I could do everything and everything I wanted. And also the way I was taught is you can do many things at the same time. It's really, society wants to label us and to put us in a box, when they told me and taught me you can do many things. As long as you commit to it, you work hard, and you love what you do, you can do whatever you want. And so they were really supportive. And the second thing is I didn't quit law. I didn't.
Bravo,
everything is linked. The way I come to choose my specialization for intellectual property is because I was doing event management and doing dancing. So that's why I specialize in intellectual property. And then being an intellectual property lawyer helped me in my dancing and to run my business as well, or to do events, because I will understand all the legal technicalities and, just be legally safe in my events and activities.
Did you help any other dancers? Because, I mean, it's very powerful to be a dancer event management with a legal background working as a lawyer. It would have been a nice little sideline to help dancers with their contracts. And
I did. I did that a lot in France. And this is actually part of another business I designed when I was doing my Master of Creative Industries. I want to set up a mentoring business where we'll help artists to develop projects and to be trained legally or to understand their rights so they could work and not be being used by big companies and, just to be able to be paid right.
Are artists paid better in this country and looked after better, or France? Which country values its artists more?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. It's different. It's not the same. Art is used in a different way. So I would say in Australia you have a lot of festivals and you have a lot of events, because especially in Melbourne you have events every weekend. Without COVID, you have events every weekend. So you have the double of opportunities to be exposed and to be presented as an artist. So you will have more opportunities and maybe you will be paid less. When in France, you will have big shows and big productions. And then you will have dancers who are doing classes. So you don't have so many opportunities and so many avenues to develop your income. So when you do have this kind of contract, you are paid more. That's what I would say. Yeah.
Is podcasting an art in France?
Would you like to know if you are an artist?
well, I think when you create ideas,
I agree.
For podcasts, I think you are an artist. I'm not sure that just technically producing a podcast makes you an artist, but you are certainly working in the arts. But I think developing ideas for shows, that's no different than being a screenwriter or a playwright or a songwriter. It's just using a different medium.
I would say you're creative.
No one's singing along to any of my podcasts, but give it time.
I would definitely say you're a creative artist. It depends the definition you add to it. But the creative, yes. And I think everyone is creative in a way, some more than others, but definitely, you're definitely creative because you have ideas, you develop your ideas and find context and find individual that will be willing or who have the profile to answer the ideas you're developing. So definitely creative.
Just need to find a grant now. Just need to find a really tasty grant.
I said creative. I did not say artist. I said creative.
We love dance movies as a genre.
Mm-hmm.
What are your favorite? Which one?
Flashdance, Footloose.
What's your favorite dance movie, Grace?
I think it's Save the Last Dance because that was one of the first dance movie I saw and watched when I was a kid. And I just watched this movie so many times. I knew the choreography by heart. I was so obsessed with this movie. That was so funny. My mom was saying, "Grace, could you stop, please? Please, just stop." But I couldn't.
Let's roll off some of the greats, though, David. Calamity.
Singing in the Rain, Grace. Singing in the Rain. Have you seen Singing in the Rain?
Oh, yes, I have, but later, not when I was young.
Seven Wives for Seven Brothers. That great.
Dirty Dancing as well was one of the one I really loved.
All That Jazz?
No.
Bob Fosse film. Bob Fosse was a great choreographer. Yeah.
Okay.
There's dance and there's dance. I mean, Debbie Reynolds was 17 when she did Singing in the Rain. And I mean, your dance is very fluid, whereas the dance, say, that Debbie Reynolds performs in Singing in the Rain is highly choreographed.
I would say it's my expression. My expression is really fluid, but then some African dances that are really symmetric and more, they're really symmetric. It's just my way of dancing that is I love dancing
because it
with
looks you flow like water. I mean, I don't have the language for dance, but when I look at somebody who's doing a technical dance, I mean, so you're making something technical look effortless. Is that through years of repetition, or is it just the way it is?
I would say both. I used to be more symmetric in my dancing. I was still fluid, but I used to be more symmetric as well. It's also because at the time I was playing handball, and my way of holding myself, the way I was walking, you could just tell I was playing handball at that time. When now, I think I've loosened up. It's more about a spiritual journey in my body, within my body. So, yeah, definitely that's why I have more flow now that I used to have before.
There'll be people listening in France, Grant. We'll tell you how many people listen in France, and with a bit of luck, there might be some young people listening in Benin and Togo. What would you say to people who wanted to study here? Because you've studied, you're a French qualified lawyer, so you've gone through the French system and you're going through the Australian education system. What are the similarities and differences?
It's just really different. The way the system is built in France, most of the school, when we say public school, you don't really pay a lot if you are resident. Maybe you will just pay, I don't know, 400 if you're a resident for tuition fees. And if you're international, you will pay between 2,000 and 4,000 euros. So then in Australian dollars, it would be 3,500 and 5,000. So you just pay less. And then if you go to private schools, that's when the price will be a little bit higher, but still it wouldn't equal what we pay in Australia. When in Australia, public schools are really expensive, whether you are resident or not resident, especially for international, because we don't have this stipend that the resident receive, and so it's expensive. So if I had to advise someone, make sure you have your financial status in check and you have a plan. You need to have a plan.
Is it academically? Is it more rigorous in France or more rigorous here?
I would say it's more rigorous in France. Well, I did law, so maybe I'm not partial, but I did law, and to have high distinction in law.
Very good.
Yeah, no, it doesn't happen. If it happens, it's you don't sleep. I have some of my friends who did really good and had some distinction and some high distinction, but you wouldn't have all your courses and all your lectures high distinction. That's just not possible. That's just not possible. When in Australia, having high distinction, it's definitely possible. Yes. No, that's for a fact.
Good.
But yeah.
There's a high, and it's probably the same in France. I think that medicine and law have the highest rates of depression amongst practitioners. Is there a wonderful way for you to improve the mental health of lawyers around the city by doing dance classes for lawyers? Have you ever thought about doing anything like that?
I actually did, and I actually started, but not in Australia. I started it's so funny because I had this idea to do it in Australia. So I contacted a law firm who was interested, and we were supposed to organize it, but COVID happened. And then I thought about doing it with lawyers in France. So I've started to do online classes with lawyers in France because it has helped me. And I know a lot of lawyers who are also dancers. So why not? It's definitely a good way to get out of your head, release your pressure, release the energy, and feel happy and more focused after.
What Grant doesn't know, Grace, between criminal law and immigration law, I practiced tax law for a little while, and I could have done with you as a dance teacher, because the highlight for me as a tax lawyer was going to the bathroom 3 times a day to wash my face.
Oh my
God.
God.
Commercial law is just awful. Is that why? IP is sort of commercial and creative.
It's business, yes.
But it's business, isn't it? And business law is hard. Law is very, very. Oh, what's that? Australia. Oh, you poor man. You poor man. I don't wish the tax act on anybody. Is there a JD for you so you can become an Australian registered practitioner as well? Have you ever thought about doing a JD so you can be a duly qualified lawyer in France and Australia?
I have thought about it, but the thing is I have worked less than 7 years in France. So according to the principle, I will have to do my law degree from the very beginning.
14 subjects or 16 subjects? My word, that's too hard. That's too hard.
Yes.
As you would say in France, ça ne veut pas du tout. This will never do. Ça ne veut pas du tout.
Yes.
Now,
Yes.
tell me, I mean, it is very expensive to study here, and you've done 2 degrees here. Would you do it again?
Definitely.
What would you do differently?
Nothing. Everything happened for a reason. So I've learned so many lessons and so many ways. I learned so much about myself, about my capacity to adapt, about resilience, I wouldn't change anything. Definitely not.
My last question, you said have lots of money to study here, correct, because it's not cheap, and you said have a plan. Can you take us just briefly through what type of plan a listener should consider to enter the country and progress through the education system?
I would say to enter the country, according to the country you're coming from, just browse online and find the commercial, the regional institute, or even the embassy to look for advice and online website that you can consult to know how to live in the country, the kind of budget you need to live in the country, what kind of resources you need. If you need advice, who to turn to, definitely, to look on the internet and find those embassy or those French, or it doesn't matter which country you're from, but the embassy that is related to your country, to have those kind of advice, because that's really useful.
I do have one more question, my last question. In your honest opinion, how good a dancer is John Travolta?
He was good. Of course he was good. He was amazing. He was good.
Saturday Night Fever is
It's
the
a
film
good
I'm
movie.
thinking of. It's a great, I mean, I look at him and I go, my gosh, he's amazing. As a dancer, is he good? Is he good?
Yes, of course he is. Yes, definitely. Who hasn't copied his move or his style at a party? Everyone has.
He is very hippie, isn't he? He likes to shake it and move it. He's great. Now, when I say I've always had one last question, that's a cue for Grant to have 1 or 2 more. Have you got any questions, Grant?
Well, I do. I was just wondering, Grace, because your journey was sort of France to Australia, but you've got the African background. I can't remember whether we touched on this before, but I'm assuming that it was your parents who migrated to France and then you were born in France, or were you born in Africa? Okay. So with African parents who had the right to go to France because they came from a colonized country, did you get citizenship to any country other than France when you were born?
I could have. Well, I can claim my Beninese nationality, which is what I'm going to do. I've already started the paperwork, but then Togolese, it will be a little bit more tricky because my parents were born in Benin, even though we have Togolese background because my family originally come from Togo. Then my parents were born in Benin, so I will have the Beninese nationality, but that's it.
Cool. And how many passports are you traveling with now?
Just one.
One. So David, you've still got one more hurdle to get over.
Oh, I want Grace to go as far as she can because you're loving it here, and it's. I mean, you said it was so Australian at the start that we all shake our head and wonder why you're leaving, God's country, France. But when we listen to what you say, it really reminds us of how lucky Grant and I are to live here. And, you bring wonderful energy and positivity to us with your dance. So thanks for doing it.
My pleasure.
And
I'm
thanks for
happy.
coming on. Thanks for coming on. You've been fantastic.
Now,
Thank you for having me.
We've got no Togo or Benin. We do have Ghana. We have Nigeria.
Yes.
We have Morocco. We have Algeria. We have Egypt. We have Sudan. We have Ethiopia. We have Kenya, Zimbabwe.
We've got
Botswana, South
Guinea-Bissau. Guinea-Bissau.
Africa. No, I think unless my dates have mucked up again, let me just have a look, because they.
Are you workshopping tonight, Grace, or doing live Zoom or anything?
I have done one this morning, and I'm going to record a video for a flash mob I'm organizing for the Fringe Festival again, because I'm going to do the Fringe Festival. So
Beautiful.
I need to do my video, my promotion.
And when COVID is down and you can travel to New South Wales and Queensland, you're going to spread the gospel of dance?
Yes, I will. I was actually supposed to go to Perth to join one of my friends who is dancing and teaching there. But yeah, it didn't happen. It will happen once the restriction is.
Once the restrictions are down, you might see 2 old 50-something guys coming to your class as well, all right?
Yes.
We'll be at the back. We'll be at the back. Way
It's
at
okay.
the back.
It's okay.
Have a lovely Saturday, Grace, all right?
Thank you.
Ciao.
Have a good one. Bye.
Grace, I'm expecting that when we release this, that we'll have listeners in Togo and Benin then, and we'll have our avid followers like we do from our Costa Rican fan and our fan in the Ukraine and our fan in Uzbekistan.
Anyway, lovely weekend. Ciao, guys.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Bye, everybody.
Ciao.
Migrating to Australia podcast.com or David Bongiorno at David Bongiorno on Twitter and Instagram, and put your immigration dilemma or plight or challenge or conquest to David.
Happy to help. Happy to listen. Ciao, guys.
Hooroo.